Welcome back, ScreenRanters. Disney has been around for a long time. With that, there's bound to be some moments in their films that are too appropriate in the modern age. With Disney Plus, the House of Mouse have resorted to censoring and editing to hide said moments that could cause offense. Yet sometimes, the changes make little sense to the confused audience. Today, we're going to see which films received the editing treatment, as well as see why Disney took this measure. So grab your oversized white cartoon gloves and let's get started.
You're under arrest! Freedom is rights!
A lot of people on social media were confused by this edit on Disney Plus for 2002's Lilo and Stitch. In the original scene, Lilo goes to hide from her sister, Nani. Nani goes to look in the laundry room. She realizes that Lilo is in the tumble dryer. Soon after, Nani gets a hold of Lilo, yet the edited version changes the hiding place. Now, instead of the dryer, Lilo is inside a cupboard and hidden by an old pizza box. The reason for the change is Disney doesn't want kids to replicate what they see in the film. Dryers are known for being a bit of a hazard. Instead of changing anything, it would have made sense if Disney just added a disclaimer at the start of the film. Sort of a similar way that WWE tells us not to try out wrestling moves at home. But then we put our younger brother in the walls of Jericho, then he gets hurt and we have to bribe him in order to not tell anyone. Oh yeah, okay, so that's why Disney chose the method they went with. That makes sense. Recently, this weird censorship moment spread across social media. In the scene, we see Tom Hanks as Alan. He spots Daryl Hannah as Madison, a mermaid. She's wearing nothing but a gold necklace. As it's a Disney film, her hair covers her intimate areas. Madison kisses Alan before dashing into the ocean, with her hair covering most of her posterior. Yet, once Disney Plus came about, the House of Mouse decided that Madison's long hair wasn't quite long enough. Kids shouldn't see tushies, unless it belongs to the Hulk, apparently. So they did some sneaky CGI to add some extra hair to Madison's derriere more so. Barely anyone noticed the computer-generated change. Just kidding, everyone did. The quality of the edit was horrendous. If anything, it drew more attention to the area. The internet has been divided. Some think that Disney has gone too far. Some like that Madison's derriere is less likely to corrupt the kids' show. Regardless, the editors should have done a better job with the CGI. Now, it just gives us Cats flashbacks. At the end of Toy Story 2, we get a series of end credit scenes of planned fake bloopers, one of which involves Stinky Pete the prospector. Woody, Bullseye, and Jessie are filming a scene. Woody then goes to get Pete, however, Pete's currently occupied. He's chatting to two identical Barbies in his box. Essentially, he alludes to them an offer of a role in Toy Story 3 in return for certain gross favors. Pete then realizes he's on camera and tries to quickly move on due to embarrassment. He then mentions he was trying to give them acting tips, but that's definitely not the case. With the events in recent years such as the Me Too movement, this joke is very dated. Considering the director of Toy Story 2 was former Pixar CEO John Lasseter, it makes the scene more uncomfortable. Lasseter left Pixar in 2018 due to allegations of various similar inappropriate incidents of his own. As such, Disney decided to cut out the fake blooper completely in later DVD releases. The scene was also removed in the Disney Plus version. After a conversation with Timon and Pumbaa that brings up his perished father, Simba gloomingly walks over to a cliff. He then throws himself onto the ground. A lot of dust is kicked up and sails into the night sky. This is when the controversy kicks in during the original release of 1994's The Lion King. For a moment, the dust seems to spell out a rather randy remark. Can you see what it says? We can't say the actual word, but it means, adult napping. Some believe it was a subliminal message of Simba's thoughts about Nala. Well, Disney has been asked why they would add that in. Yet one of the animators came out to say it actually says SFX, which some people have doubts about. Regardless, Disney went into damage control. In one instance, the scene was shortened and overlapped with the next scene. In another, the dust has been reanimated, so it doesn't say anything scandalous. The latter of which is the one on Disney Plus. 80s Disney was a different beast than it is today. They seemed to like pushing the boundaries on adding slight adult content into their films, one of which involves Jessica Rabbit in 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit. When Jessica and Eddie were traveling in Benny the cartoon car, they end up crashing into a lamppost. Jessica and Eddie are then flung forward from the car and onto the ground. Well, this is when we can thank the creepy side of the internet. People have slowed that scene down and realized that as Jessica's dress rises as she's in the air, there seems to be no ending. 90s. In fact, there was. It was just the same color as her skin, but it gave the impression that Jessica had gone commando. In a later release of the film, Disney edited the color of the underthings to make them white. For some reason, making them more obvious was better at that time. Later, they reversed that choice and instead manipulated the red dress. Now, the dress covers everything, so there's no controversy to be seen. 1987's Adventure in Babysitting was directed by future Harry Potter film creator Chris Columbus. There's some trivia for you. Anyway, the Disney epic is a cult classic, yet one of the most memorable lines was changed during a later censorship edit. In one scene, we see the kids get threatened with a knife by the cliche-named gang Lords of Hell. The angry leader of the group states, "Don't fool with the Lords of Hell," which is a weird sentence. Chris, played by Elizabeth Shue, then says the same phrase only with babysitter replacing the gang name. Well, that's the more kid-friendly TV version used in broadcasts. In the cinematic release, instead of saying fool, they said a word that rhymes with duck. The word fool was dubbed in later. Any of those that can read lips will notice that neither character was saying fool originally. Disney Plus decided to stick with the TV edit when adding the film to their library. During 2018, the documentary Free Solo was released. It's all about Alex Honnold's attempt to free climb the mountain El Capitan in the Yosemite National Park. The film was produced by National Geographic, which Disney owns a major stake in. The film even won an Oscar. Since the film is about dangerous climbing and the stress of Honnold's life, it's understandable if he slips in some naughty words sometimes. Well, Mickey Mouse wasn't too keen on that for their streaming platform. At one point, Honnold stated that something is messed up. In the original version, instead of saying messed, he used the word that rhymes with the past tense of duck. Later on in the stress-inducing film, Honnold also utters a phrase that rhymes with dog ham. Instead of finding an alternative phrase to dub over with, the editors cut the phrase out completely. The more family-friendly version is the one used on Disney Plus, while the version with the more hardcore language was the one in the cinema. Some people have found the phrase changes to be jarring, while others didn't even realize there was a difference. Classic Disney has a bit of a troubled history when it comes to racial stereotypes, Song of the South being the most infamous example. Many of their older films will have disclaimers on the site apologizing for what people will see. Well, one such troublesome animation was 1932's short film Santa's Workshop. While it's only 7 minutes long, it's still intense. In the original, we can see Santa Claus inspecting dolls made by his army of elves. The dolls are somewhat sentient. The white dolls spring to life and gets stamped with OK on its backside once it says Mama on Santa's request. Next up, we have the offensive character. Playing on horrific stereotypes of black people with its design, the doll screams Mammy at Santa as he laughs at the doll's actions. The doll then stamps OK on its own accord before dashing away clumsily. That scene was thankfully cut out of the Disney Plus version. However, later on in the film, we see a collection of dolls marching, some of which are offensive stereotypes of Asian people. That was kept in for some reason. Once again, another film that was made during Disney's dodgy era of racial stereotypes. The Adventures of Bullwhip Griffin is a bit of an obscure comedy western film that came out in 1967. It's all about a boy going to California during the gold rush in the 1840s. As such, there were a lot of racial slurs in the original release of the film, which is strange, since even during its original release, it was advertised as a family film. However, as the years went by, Disney felt like a change was needed. The world was becoming more aware of using such gross slurs. So, the House of Mouse removed the slurs, either by cutting the line or by simply dubbing a less offensive line in its place. The heavily edited version is the one that the Disney Plus service added to their streaming library. If the voice of Bullwhip Griffin sounds familiar, well, there's a good reason for that. The actor Roddy McDowall was the voice for Jarvis Tetch, otherwise known as the Mad Hatter in many DC shows such as Batman, the animated series. The Oscar-nominated 1977 animated film The Rescuers is an underrated classic, yet in 1999, the film was covered in controversy, yet not for censorship that Disney had to inflict on their original film this time. In VHS copies of The Rescuers, there was a slight added extra that the original release didn't show. As Miss Bianca and Bernard are flying on Orville's back through New York, we can see the windows of homes. Well, instead of a shadowy silhouette of people inside their apartments, one window was replaced with a grainy image of a topless woman. Yep, you heard that right. The picture can only be seen for a couple of frames before the scenery changes. An unknown person had somehow slipped this image past quality control and into the film legend Disney issued a mass recall of tapes as soon as word began to spread. Apparently, there were over 3 million of the risque tapes out in the world. The offending image was then hidden or removed completely from further copies. As such, the non-scandalous original version is what's on Disney+.
There, Teddy. I won't let them do that to you again.
And that's a wrap. Are there any other films that were censored for Disney+? Pop your answers below. If you feel enlightened by the video, give it a like and share it. If you haven't already, subscribe to keep up to date with new content. Finally, thanks for joining us. Bye.